Hello everyone, welcome back to GGN. This is part 4 for this news report today. It's Tuesday, April 16th, 2013. I'm Darko. Check out my website, it's ggnonline.com. If you'd like to help me out, donations, I'd appreciate it. And also on YouTube, it's ddarko2012 and ddarko2013. Okay, so all the headlines and all these articles will be in YouTube's video description, and that's it. Time for a preemptive strike against North Korea? Question mark. Some say yes. Let's do it. Let's do it, man. University of Texas professor argues for a strike against North Korea in a New York Times op-ed. Some U.S. military planners are sympathetic to the idea, while others accuse him of being a warmonger. Said the plan was impressive, recalled an official. Says here it could be executed with only a few days alert, and it would entail little or no risk to U.S. casualties during the attack. So. Clearly a lot of empathy, over there, right? So let's go on a preemptive attack. U.S. military chopper crashes near North Korea border. A U.S. military helicopter taking part in a joint drill with South Korea has crashed near the North Korean border with 21 personnel on board. Executed a hard landing during a routine flight operation. A routine exercise, too. Like I said, they're always exercising out there. North Korea has no nuclear missile capability, says the White House. It said that Washington did not believe North Korea had the capability to deploy a nuclear-armed missile. Next up, we have Kerry to North Korea. North Korea must abandon nuclear program for diplomacy. So isn't that completely one-sided? That's fair, that's justice, right? That's peace and tolerance. North Korea doesn't see good faith and offers for dialogue. The U.S. is willing to engage with North Korea in diplomacy, according to Secretary of State Kerry, but only if they disagree or agree to dismantle their nuclear program first. So just basically say, get on your knees, right? Remember we were talking about Dennis Rodman being a, who knows, maybe a Freemason, maybe an operative. I don't mean like some, James Bond, just, someone that's a regular dude, has a high-profile status, can go places some people can't. And works for the agency, right? A good patriot. Dennis Rodman, FBI informant. Former NBA star says FBI wants him as an informant. He says they want him to be an informant for them over North Korea. The key to peace in Korea is remove U.S. presence. It says here that ROKS Cheenen is hit by what appears to be a German-made torpedo, sinks while claiming the lives of 46 South Korean sailors. The world, America is at the lead, was quick to point its finger at North Korea before South Korea itself ruled him out as a suspect. North Korea adamantly insisted it was not behind the attack, and despite their paranoid and isolated posture, little beyond insanity could serve as a motive. It says despite evidence adding up otherwise, to no one's surprise, a joint international investigation by the U.S., UK, South Korea, Australia, and blah blah blah, we later concluded that a North Korean submarine was the culprit, said, leaving even most South Koreans skeptical. So it says here, endless war in Central Asia and the Middle East, along with deepening economic crisis in the West, allowed other actors to begin eyeing the seemingly void soon to be left. So it goes on here, and it says that even in Japan, Prime Minister was reasserting itself over the unpopular U.S. military installations scattering throughout Japan. China was continuing to expand its economic and diplomatic influence in the region, luring in even America's traditional allies like Australia and Thailand. We covered this before. North Korea, either out of shadowy complicity or because of its paranoid, predictable nature, became America's greatest ally in many ways. So they're basically able to deploy a decent amount of forces and missile batteries and stuff around that area aimed at China. Korean unification, do not be surprised if it comes soon. It says here the North Korean regime could collapse in the same way, the same unexpected way, leaving shocked politicians, diplomats to fend for with its consequences. So this would be like jackals, right? They have complete control over the South, and it would be nice if they could unite and for the Korean people, by the Korean people, but they won't do that. It'll be completely outside induced, most likely by the U.S. and West, and then of course the North will be sucked into this. Into the southern, quote, democratic system, where they won't have any sovereignty at all. It says here, Massachusetts Congressman, look at the symbols that were attacked in Boston. So remember we were talking about this. Look at the symbols. A Chinese student, and China, basically in particular, China criticizes U.S. force strengthening in Asia. So the U.S. is definitely concerned, and Europe and that, with Asia, by, was it 2014, 2015, they're basically going to be a dominant power over them, and they're doing everything in their power to try to prevent that. In the latest account of national defense efforts, China said Tuesday that the U.S. is destabilizing the Asia-Pacific region by strengthening its military alliances and sending more ships, planes, and troops to the area. The U.S. policy known as the pivot to Asia runs counter to regional trends, frequently makes a situation tenser, says the defense minister. Says all these military buildups are not in line with the calling of the times and are not conducive to the upholding of peace and stability in the region. China has 1.48 million troops minus missile forces, says a white paper. So, yeah, annual white paper says that the 2.3 million strong PLA's actual number of troops in the Army, Navy, Air Force, says here, is 1.4. China takes another stab at the dollar and launches currency swap line with France. Says one more domino in the dollar reserve supremacy regime falls is following the announcement 2 weeks ago that Australia and China would enable direct currency convertibility, which in turn was the culmination of 2 years of yuan internationalization efforts. So go in there and check it out. You have Moscow fuming over U.S.-Georgia military drill. Says more than 350 U.S. Marines and several hundred Georgian Army troops angered Moscow by holding a month-long military drill in the former Soviet Republic that ended April 5th. It was codenamed Agile Spirit 2013, which prompted the Russians to stage large-scale unscheduled drills of their own. It says these annual events, which our American partners explained as preparation for Afghan operations, caused concern, says the Russian Foreign Ministry. It's funny they said they're for Afghanistan. So this just plays out the narrative. It says, yeah, Georgians have good reason to be alarmed. They're talking about alarmed by the unexpected provocative activity of the Russian troops. They're talking about the 2008, where I actually remember seeing this basically video. It was an interview of this woman and her child, and the girl was like, yeah, actually, it was the Russian troops that helped us. It was the Georgian troops that were firing on us. And then you had, I think it was that, what's the guy named from Fox, Shepard or something like that? And he basically cut him off to commercial. Scrap blacklist, fight terrorism together, says Russian officials to the United States. So, several top Russian officials have said that the U.S. and Russia must join forces in countering terrorism, expressing hope it would revive the ties that came under threat after the Magnitsky list was published. So, again, they do two training exercises, Russia, NATO. They do Arctic training operations, similar type of space programs. You know, the weaponization of space that the former Nazi head of NASA was talking about. I think this whole thing is just a big show. Even with China, about the rising of China by 2015, the U.S. is concerned. Well, yeah, the U.S. is going to be concerned, but at the same time, the people that run in the show that create all of this homogenization of our globe, this is all part of the plan. So they're all going to become one terrorism group, one intelligence agency, one economy. Stephen Hawking predicts end-of-Earth scenario. So the renowned theoretical physicist urges humans to go into space in order to save ourselves. So not anything new. I mean, this is all scattered about in movies, sci-fi movies. Stephen Hawking, one of the world's greatest physicists, was warning his fellow humans that our extinction is on the horizon unless we figure out a way to live in space. So, not known for conspiracy theories, his rationale is that the Earth is far too delicate a planet to continue to withstand the barrage of human battering. So we must continue to go into space for humanity. So it says we won't survive another 1,000 years. So, so this is what they're planning, right? Leaving. And who's going to leave? Well, it's going to be elites. It'll be maybe people like him, Russians, and who are the people that are spilling oil, building oil pipelines that are spilling, like we just covered in the last video. Nuclear barrels sitting on the bottom of the English Channel. Fukushima, raising radiation standards. Who's doing all these things? Is it coming from the people? Hell no, it isn't. But those people will be stuck down here to suffer their consequences, the consequences of their actions. Russians to simulate Mars colonization in U.S. desert. Team Russia is arriving in the U.S. on Tuesday to join an international simulated Mars colonization project. Starting on April 20th, a Russian crew of 6 will spend 2 weeks in conditions similar to those they can expect to experience on the Red Planet. It's called the Mars Desert Research Station. It says in the canyons of Utah. It says it resembles the Martian landscape. So I'm not sure if this is the same thing. I tried to look and see, but it says first manned Mars mission draws flood of applicants. They'll be crammed into a space the size of an RV for more than a year, breathing recycled air, eating dehydrated food, drinking purified urine. So it says if they die, they'll be freeze-dried in a body bag. But the applications are rolling in for the first manned mission to Mars. They want to launch 2 humans on a 501-day flyby journey to the Red Planet and back in January 2018. FAA to simulate effects of radiation on space tourists. As Virgin Galactic and other companies prepare to send humans into space, the FAA wants to learn about the effects of repeated exposure to cosmic radiation. How much radiation can the human body withstand in space? Government reacts to Fukushima radiation crisis by raising acceptable radiation standards instead of fixing anything. So it says just like the financial crisis, the Gulf oil spill, and all other crises, government covers up instead of addressing the real problems. So it goes on here, it says they're trying to raise the acceptable radiation levels and pretend that radiation is all good for us. So it says Fukushima radiation is showing up in fish on the west coast of the United States. So scientists are sounding alarm as additional human deaths and health problems arise on the U.S. west coast due to the radiation. That's what we were talking about, about a week and a half ago, hypothyroidism. You've also had issues in Canada as well, in their drinking water. But what did they do in Canada? I think even in the U.S., the EPA and that, they raised the acceptable limits or acceptable levels of radiation. That's all they did. U.S. court pays $6 million to Gardasil victims. It says Gardasil, the vaccine for HPV, may not be as safe as backers claim. So there was a bunch of people out there that are called conspiracy theorists that talked about this 4 years ago, but nobody listens to them, right? Because they're being naive. So this here they announced they received documents from the Department of Health and Human Services revealing that its National Vaccine Injury Compensation Program, which technically doesn't exist, has awarded $5 million to 49 victims and claims made against the highly controversial HPV vaccines. The CDC recommends the vaccine made by Merck for all females between 9 and to 26 years old. They say Gardasil is licensed as safe and effective for males 9 through 26 years. But it says here the Judicial Watch president said this new information from government shows that the serious safety concerns about the use of Gardasil have been well-founded. Public health officials should stop pushing Gardasil on children. Australian Medical Association calls for mandatory proof of vaccination. Parents who fail to vaccinate their children should face barriers to enrolling them in school and child care centers, the Australian Medical Association says. They said they have to have proof of vaccination when children enroll. Inhofe and MoveOn.org, George Soros, Michael Moore created global warming hoax. Says Senator James Inhofe on Wednesday explained that Al Gore and the United Nations get most of the blame for what he called global warming hoax, but filmmaker Michael Moore and billionaire George Soros deserve some credit too. Says one of the major hoaxes ever perpetrated on the American people. Besides the UN, also the Hollywood elite are responsible. Hold on to your seats, it's a shocker. Solar panels could destroy U.S. utilities, according to U.S. utilities. Solar power and other distributed renewable energy could lay waste to U.S. power utilities and burn the utility business model, which has remained virtually unchanged for a century. It goes on here, and it says here, the problem is providing power to meet peak load is where utilities make a huge chunk of their money. It's the most expensive power. So when solar panels provide peak power, they aren't just reducing demand, they're reducing demand for the utility's most valuable product. Genetically modified meat and fish set to go on sale, scientists press ahead despite public outrage. They said to grant approval in the United States. The move alarms critics battling to stop the expansion of GM crops, so good luck. British Pig 26 in drive to create disease-resistant GM animals. So they go on here, they're going to create the first genetically modified pig. Analysis finds Monsanto's GM corn nutritionally dead and highly toxic. Organic fruit can be tainted by antibiotics until 2014. That's right, the USDA has approved these new options to spray it with antibiotics. Thank you.